Okay, good evening, everyone. Sorry, it's new laptop, trying to figure it out. Some of you may have heard that I accidentally left my laptop in Korea. There was a kerfuffle over packing, so I had to buy a new one, and I've had this one for fewer than 24 hours. I'm sorry the camera quality is not as good as on my other laptop, which was literally 3 times as much as this one was. I wasn't going to invest another $1,500 in a temporary replacement laptop. Anyway, enough about my travel woes. So, welcome to Florence, everyone. This is my apartment. Let's see if I can show you around without making you too sick. I found this place on Airbnb, and the really salient feature are the beams. So I've definitely had some interesting new lessons learned on this trip already, and I just started a couple of days ago, technically. Sorry it's so dark in here. Like, literally, I have every single light on in this place, and it's still dark. I'll have to try to play with the lighting a little bit some other time. Maybe if I open this blind. Yeah, probably didn't do much. It's okay. So, yeah, it's okay. So, does anyone have any questions to start off? Someone pre-posed a question because she wasn't certain whether she'd be able to make it. And this is probably a question that's going to be on many of your minds. And it is about how to travel inexpensively. Hello, Evan. Oh, one of my top fans. Thank you for joining in. One of the issues on most people's minds these days, especially now that COVID is becoming manageable at any rate, and many countries are introducing policies that allow people to travel in without spending 2 weeks in quarantine, like Korea's still doing. Korea, get with the program, people. Anyway, so people want to know, well, how can I travel to places like Europe inexpensively? Because everyone has this impression that travel to Europe or anywhere outside of the US or outside of your own country, wherever your country is, must be expensive unless your country is in Europe, and then another country is literally an hour drive away. But I'm talking about going far away from your place of residence by plane. And the reality is that there's a couple of ways you can minimize the cost and actually travel for really inexpensively. Yeah, the apartment, it really is. It's fantastic. Really, this was a great find. And because I'm here for 2 weeks, I got a really great discount on longevity. So that's another tip. If you're going to go someplace, if you stay in one place, so first, cheap travel tip. If you go someplace and you rent a vacation apartment like this, I got this through Airbnb, but there are other platforms. There's nearly always a long-term discount. So if you rent for a week, or 2 weeks or a month at a time, you get more and more of a discount, to the point where I'm only paying $30 US dollars a day for this place. It has a kitchen, and I think I might be able to take you on a little tour here in a moment. It has a kitchen. You'll get to see what I'm cooking for dinner. That's sort of okay equipped. I had to go and buy some basics like a whisk and a rubber scraper, and I had asked for a cutting board, but $38 a day. It has this massive great room. I could teach dance in here, easy peasy. It has a pretty nice, cute little kitchen, and it's got a pretty large bedroom, especially by European standards, and a bathroom with a proper shower and a washing machine. So I can do my own laundry here, I can cook here, I can save a lot of money by cooking my own food and not eating out all the time. So that's step one on how to make your trip more inexpensive, is don't stay in a hotel, stay in a vacation apartment. And if you stay in one place for a week or two, then you benefit from the discount of staying in that place. And then what I do, or what I'm going to do, is make day trips out from here, right? Because Italy is a civilized country. It has a very good train system and some really high-speed trains. So I can get from Florence to Bologna in 30 minutes. I can get from Florence to Venice in an hour. Florence to Rome, 2 to 3 hours. I think I can actually get that to Napoli that quickly too on the super high-speed train. and also for inexpensively, 20 euros, 12 euros to Bologna, 20 euros to Venice, 30 euros to Rome. It's not expensive. And so I benefit from being in one place and being able to cook my own meals, and also still getting to do day trips and travel and explore different places. So that's tip one. Rent an apartment, prepare as many of your own meals as possible. Minimize eating out in restaurants. Tip two, the sink all by itself. To my left looks sink. Oh, yes, that little guy back there, that stone sink. Yeah, I actually asked my landlord if I could use it because medievalist, that looks pretty cool. And he kind of got this pained expression on his face. And he said, well, it does work, but it's really hard to open the faucet and it's even harder to close, ... And I thought, okay, maybe I won't do that. But I've seen these kinds of sinks in lots of 17th century buildings. So I think this was the original running water access. And they now have a modern sink over to the right behind that arch that's behind me. $38 a day. You did hear that right. Okay, off season. Okay, I'm not here in summer when all the school children are here. That's my next tip. Travel in the off season. $38 a day for this apartment, right? For this place. I'm sorry, this is not the most professional, stable filming I've ever done in my life. Right, $38 a day because I'm here for 2 weeks. Please don't fall off laptop. I don't want to spend another $600 on another laptop. $38 a day because I'm here for 2 weeks and I'm in the off season. So that's my other travel tip. Which side of the Arno? Oh, this is not on Otro Arno. This is on the main side of the Arno, the main side of the Arno, not Otro Arno. I did consider going over to Oltrano, but honestly, I didn't feel like dragging my 32 kilogram bag across the cobblestones all the way over there. It's just, this bag it's on its last legs and it's not going to last very much longer. Long story. Anyway, so I found this place and it's actually right around the corner from Santa Maria Novella, both the convent and the train station. It's literally a 5-minute walk from the train station. And the tram that goes straight to the airport stops right there at the corner. So really, this was a major find. She's very hot on her luggage. Yeah, I am. So this is on the main side, the side with Palazzo Medici Riccardi and the train station and all of that. Yeah. There are a bunch of really inexpensive places also on the other side, literally the other side of the Arno, as it's called in Italian. But like I said, wanted this one for ease of luggage dragging. So tip number 2 on cheap travel is the off season. If you have the flexibility and you're not tied to school breaks and major holidays, always pick the shoulder season or even the completely off season. I'm going to be honest. It was 60 degrees Fahrenheit, like 14 degrees centigrade today, and sunny and beautiful outside. And especially in the sunshine, it was really warm. In fact, a little too warm. I had to improvise on a different lighter jacket than the one I originally put on. But it's great. It might sprinkle, it might rain a little bit occasionally, but then you just have an umbrella. It doesn't really do torrential rain here. It's not much of a feature of this part of Europe. So by traveling in the off season, plane tickets are cheaper, lodging is cheaper, and also I have the city almost to myself. Relative to when I was here back in October or November, getting towards the Christmas season when it was packed with tourists, there's hardly anyone here. It's Saturday, right? Yeah. So it's Saturday, and that's the day when there's going to be the most people, visiting on weekend trips, and actually when all the Florentines come out from the suburbs and come into the city and walk around and have dinner. And it wasn't really that busy, even with it being Saturday. So off season. So tip 1, rent an apartment in one place for as long as you can, maximize the long stay discount and eating your own cooked food. 2 is off season. Whatever the off season is. And remember, if you're traveling in the Southern Hemisphere, off season is going to be a different time of year than if you're traveling in the Northern Hemisphere, because their summer is our winter and vice versa. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of nice places in this. You're right. You know the area really well here in Santa Maria Novella. There are a lot of nice places. There's a lot of cute little eateries. There's great places to visit. One of the oldest perfume shops, continuously operating perfume shops in Europe, is right there, the Santa Maria Novella Officina. Hold on a minute. I left something on the stove. Caught it just in time. Those onions are caramelized and not burnt. Okay. Tip 2, booking your flight. So some of you may know this, some of you may not. If you have a VPN blocker and you set it to a low-income country like Burundi or Tonga or India, then often the airfares are actually going to be reflective of that low income market. And so you will actually be able to book tickets for more cheaply, the exact same ticket, exact same airline, exact same destination and origin for more cheaply by putting your VPN blocker on and setting it to a low income country. And I actually ran this experiment. So like if booking the same ticket from Indonesia versus Korea, which is a high income country, these days, there was a several $100 difference. So tip 3, set your VPN blocker for a low income country, and then you can benefit from relatively inexpensive tickets. Tip 4 is actually save. So I know that sounds trite, but hear me out. This is what my husband and I did for a long time when we were on much tighter budget than we are now. We actually set up a separate account, completely separate bank account, in the same bank account, but you can set up sub accounts. We set up a separate sub account in our online banking that was specifically for travel. And we would set a specific amount of money to go into that every month. And within enough time, we actually had saved up enough for tickets. So if you can budget your daily life in such a way that you can, save 10, 20, 50, $100 a month, whatever works for your budget, eventually you will save up enough for airfare. Now, airfare across an ocean does not have to be expensive if you're flying economy class. Frequently, you can get tickets if you're flying in the off-season. You can get tickets for $500, $600 round trip, including taxes, to Korea, for instance, or to Europe. Now, if you're going to try to fly at Christmas time, you're going to pay the piper. If you're going to try to fly during summer, sorry, everyone else wants to fly then too. Again, this kind of plays into the off-season thing. Yeah, with a VPN, basically. By buying, exactly. So back to the VPN thing. Basically, you're telling the booking platform that you are from a low-income country, and they still want people from everywhere to buy tickets because they can help fill the plane, and so there a lot of fares are set for very specific markets. It's the same thing with cruise fares. People in the UK frequently pay more for a cruise fare than people in the US, especially once you do the currency exchange. Although currency effects are kind of artificial, so I try not to play that game too much. But even if you just look at dollars to British pounds, US dollars to British pounds, the fare for the exact same voyage on the exact same cruise line will be more expensive in the UK than it will be in the US. And often you'll also get more amenities if you book from a US address. You have to have an actual address to make that trick work, unlike airlines. So another trick on how to afford an international trip is to play the reward credit card game. And this is a game that's easy to play and you can do it well and you won't end up in debt, but you have to do it right. So there are a lot of reward credit cards out there that give you points for the amount that you spend on them. And a lot of them come with these massive sign-up bonuses. So for instance, the City Premier currently comes with an 80,000 point sign-up bonus. And those points you can then transfer to airlines' frequent flyer programs and book award tickets for just the cost of taxes. And to give you an example, a business class, one-way business class from the US to Europe will range anywhere, depending on the airline, from 60,000 to 100,000 points, depending on the airline. And so literally by just getting one of those credit cards and making the spend, which is usually $3,000 in 3 months, which most people spend if they actually start tracking their expenses, then you get this free 80,000 points, and that's one-way business class or round-trip economy class to and from Europe for free. Just from you spending what you would normally spend. So we have racked up hundreds of thousands of points. That's how we do all of our business class, first class travel these days is points. We don't buy those tickets with cash, we use our points. So like I just took this Air France flight from Seoul to Florence, Seoul to Charles de Gaulle, Paris to Florence. And I spent $45 on taxes, and the rest was points that I'd earned from just buying other things in my life that I would normally buy. Groceries, restaurants, gas, all of those purchases add up really quickly. And if you actually get points from your credit card, reward points from putting those on a credit card instead of paying cash or using a debit card, then within a year, you're going to have plenty of points for 1, 2, maybe 3 round trip tickets across an ocean from your home country. But there's a catch. You have to use the credit card in the same way you would use a debit card, right? So don't rack up debt. Only spend the amount that you can pay off at the end of every month comfortably. That's the trick to the reward card game. But that's the best way, in my opinion, to travel comfortably, because then you can actually do aspirational travel, which means flying business or first class on long haul flights. And I will tell you, if you've never flown business or first class on a long haul flight, it will change the way you experience travel, because you will arrive at your destination refreshed and happy and hydrated and not hungry and ready to just go and explore, rather than arriving at your destination jet lagged, dehydrated, starving, malnourished, and possibly grumpy because you were also cramped in this relatively tiny seat. So reward travel credit cards, and I might do a completely separate Q&A on that because I've got a lot of experience there. Oh, yeah, no, good tickets are good questions. So the question is, don't you have to give your actual home address to get tickets? So yes, you do. You have to give your billing address, but it doesn't change the fare because the fare is based on your location. It's a catch. Maybe the airlines will eventually catch on, but as long as you are booking the ticket in the currency of the country of your VPN, like you don't try to change it to US or you change your location, you go based on your VPN and the country that the airline's website then recognizes, then there you go. No, it doesn't change the fare at all, as weird as that is. Yeah, that was a very good question. Okay, so those are my tips for cheap travel. 1, rent an apartment, cook your own food, and rent an apartment long-term so that you benefit from that long-term discount. 2, travel in the off-season, always in the off-season. 3, VPN blocker to change your location to a low-income location and thereby benefiting from the fare in the local currency. And sometimes you'll even, not only will the fare be lower in the local currency, but the exchange rate effect will also be in your favor as well. That often happens, especially if you can manage to pick a country whose currency is doing particularly badly against the US dollar or the euro, whatever your home currency is: pound, US dollar, Australian dollar, won. And then for the credit card game, if you can get a good reward card and put all of your spending on it, all of your monthly spending, and if you can manage it, your rent, car payments, whatever you can get on it, and then you'll actually basically you'll be earning a sort of currency that you can then use to book really nice flights for almost nothing. So those are my primary travel tips for inexpensive travel. So if please keep the questions coming in the chat until there's another question. I'm going to move on to the next thing I wanted to talk about specifically for travel, and that is things you might need that you don't expect you're going to need, and in countries like Italy especially. So the European Union, why am I talking about this? Well, follow me here. The European Union, when it became a thing, introduced a whole bunch of regulatory standards across the whole EU for products, specifically, especially electricity and electrical wiring. And so what you ended up with is standardization of things like plugs and outlets. And that's why when you go to the US, when you go from the US to another country, generally you have to bring an adapter, a plug adapter. Yeah, I have a bunch of adapters. But in Italy, unfortunately, especially in older properties like these, what you're going to end up with are outlets that predate the EU and predate that standardization. And so they actually don't work with standard EU plugs, standard 220 EU plugs. And so you actually need an adapter for the old Italian style plugs just to adapt to the EU size plug, and then your adapter for the EU plug 220 plugs will fit in that. So you end up with these stacked sets of adapters. And a lot of these apartments will not, so hotels will have the modern outlets for the most part. I've never stayed in a hotel in Italy that didn't. But these older properties do not have modernized outlets. And generally the appliances they have specialty plugs to fit the old style ones. So you might need to actually procure some of these adapter 220 to 220 adapters, just so you can then use your adapter. Now, luckily, it's a common issue. And so there's always some little electronics shop on almost every block here in every city in Italy that I've ever been to where there are tourists, where you can go and buy these adapters for 3 euros, sometimes less, sometimes 150 if it's just a plain one-to-one adapter. It's a good thing to just kind of know about and just bring just in case, because if you arrive late at your Airbnb property and you need to recharge your devices, but all you have is your 110 to 220 adapter, it's probably not going to work in the outlets in your place. So come pick it up. You can, on your way into your place, if you're walking from the train station, you'll probably pass one of these shops. Train stations also have lots of these electronic shops. Good tip. And pick up one and bring it with you so that when you arrive late at night at your Airbnb, you can just go. Now, you can also ask if you get there and there aren't adapters, like there weren't at my place. And so I messaged my host this morning and I said, hey, I can't plug in the hot water kettle because it's a new EU plug, but you've got the old plugs. Can you bring me an adapter? And of course, he then brought me an adapter. He also brought me a cutting board because there was no cutting board. But that meant that the first night I was here, by the time I realized it, I was playing a very scary kind of outlet game to make sure that I didn't lose connectivity. So that's my other tip. Fat prongs versus skinny prongs. That's exactly right. Yep. Bingo. And also the holes are slightly closer on the one versus the other. So so on the old plugs, they had skinny prongs, and on the new ones, they're fatter and a little closer, and the skinny prongs were a little farther apart. And so it's just incompatible enough to not work. Yeah. Oh, yes. So that's a good point. So dual voltage. you want to make sure that if you are using just an adapter and not a transformer, that your electronics are dual voltage or pan voltage in some cases. So if you look on your laptop plugs on the adapter part of it, actually, there'll be a label and it should say 110 to maybe 250 volts, something like that. That means it's multi-voltage. It can take anything within those ranges, right? If it doesn't say that, then you need to get a different adapter altogether for your device. And if it's a big enough appliance, then you need a transformer, which is a much bigger, more involved device that literally transforms the voltage. Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Yep. Make sure that your electronics are dual voltage. Now, I've never had a cell phone, I've never had a smartphone that wasn't dual voltage. I've never had a laptop that wasn't dual voltage. So those devices tend to be made that way out of hand because it's understood you're going to be traveling around with them. Oh, I guess you've never made that mistake, huh? With a shocked face. So I'll take that as a yes, you have. So some other tips. Yeah, my love, what was it exactly that you destroyed by plugging in? You're not the you neither, huh, Lysandra? Yep, sounds about right. None of us have ever destroyed electronics in this fashion. Yeah, so like your hair dryer might not be dual voltage, for instance, and you definitely don't want to find that out the hard way. The smell will be egregious. Other questions, or shall I just continue rambling about my travel tips, that the things that I've realized on this trip in particular thus far? Oh, fans. Oh, yes. Yeah, I remember that. That was sad. Yeah. Oof. So, tourist destinations are tourist destinations for a reason. It's because they're beautiful and they have sights worth seeing. Nearly always. There's a few exceptions where it's just overhyped, but for the most part, it's worth seeing, like Florence. The problem is that when it's so popular with tourists, eventually the real estate prices and rents skyrocket, and locals can no longer afford to live in the actual historic city centers. So they move out into the burbs. But that also means that if you are staying in a place for like historic medieval center of Florence, like I am, for a protracted time, you're actually going to have needs that are like normal living needs. And for instance, I needed a laptop. Unfortunately, the kind of stores that actually sell things that cater to day-to-day life tend not to be in the historic city centers anymore. They tend to have all moved out to where the rents are cheaper also, and also where the quote unquote real Florentines, the real residents, live. So if you find yourself in need of day-to-day products, electronics, clothing that isn't overpriced because it's, the Chanel store right around the corner, then you are going to probably have to exit the city center and go into the periphery of any given town. For instance, I had to go to Media World, which was at this mall, this very American-looking mall outside. Still in Florence. It was only in like a 45-minute walk for me. I walk quickly, but still, there's really not much left in downtown Florence, like old city Florence, that is actually practical like that. It's all, paper shops and leather shops and ceramics, maiolica and gelateria and restaurants, and those little mini electronics bodegas where you get things that are specific for cell phones and plug adapters. But for major things, you're going to have to go outside of the city center. But for that, you'll then get to see how the real people live, like in their day-to-day lives. You'll get to actually see restaurants where the prices are reasonable. You'll get to see, spas where the prices are reasonable. If you just take a 2-kilometer walk outside of the historic city center, you suddenly find mom and pop cafes, restaurants that have a menu for lunch where it's 10 euros and you get a primo and a segundo, and you get your appetizer, your salad, something like that, and you get a main course, a main dish, some kind of meat dish, and that's for 10 euros instead of the 20 to 30 euros it would be here in the historic part of Florence. So by leaving the city center, you will also, that's another tip for saving money. If you're actually going to go out, not only will you get less expensive food, but you're more likely to get more authentic food in the sense of that's what people are actually just normal everyday people are eating, rather than the big hits that are going to be, say, here in Florence, which is going to be steak, it's going to be ossobuco, it's going to be cinguale, so this boar ragu over pasta, right? And then of course some stuffed pastas. But if you get outside of the historic part, you'll get really local, fresh food where the menu changes every day. And that's another tip. Look for the restaurants that don't have a permanent printed menu, but that have a limited, handwritten, preferably slightly illegible menu. Maybe it's on a chalkboard even, because that means it changes every day and it's based on what is fresh and available, rather than forcing some kind of artificiality over top of it. Ava is trying to get in. Why can't she get in? Okay. I wonder why she can't get in. My love, can you help her, maybe? Yep, I agree 100%. Stay away from the tourist tracks. Yep. Wander. That's the other thing about cities like Florence. Yes, there are great museums, and I love the museums here, but the city itself is the museum. Like, it is the thing to see. And to do that, you literally just have to wander randomly up and down all the little back alleys. Like, if you see a back alley, take it. Could come to trouble, but I've never had any problem wandering alone by myself late at night in any part of Florence, even the scariest looking dark alleys. But also get outside of the city, and it doesn't take far. When I was here the last time, one of my I'm taking Italian classes, and one of my classmates complained that she felt a little toxified because medieval Florence is artificial, literally, in the sense of it's very man-made. Buildings, abutting buildings, there are no green spaces inside medieval Florence. But you don't have to go far to find the green spaces. Literally, you cross the river to Otrano, you go up the hill, and suddenly there's vineyards and trees and beautiful, walking paths everywhere. And I wonder if I was trying to figure out if there was a way to share my screen. I'll look into that next week because I got some really good pictures from my walk today. So especially in cities like Florence, just walk a little bit away from the main tourist areas and you're going to find really splendid areas, sites to see that aren't packed with tourists. Yeah, unfortunately, some of the packed tourist areas sometimes are packed because they're really worth seeing. And sometimes it's worth paying what I call the tourist tax to sit at that cafe in the Signoria, the Piazza della Signoria, near the Palazzo Vecchio, and just people watch. Yeah, you're going to pay, I don't know, 5 euros for a cup of coffee to just sit at that table in the square. But sometimes it's worth it. You're paying for the table, you're paying for the view, you're not paying for the coffee. The coffee will probably be adequate. Oh yes, no, I'm yeah. Go visit Siena and Monteriggioni. Yeah, I'm going to definitely go. I'm hitting Siena this time for certain. I'm going back to Lucca for like a whole day because last time I only got like an hour or two in Lucca. By the time we finished eating our late lunch, there was only an hour or two left to walk around. So I'm going back to Lucca. With Florence as a base, there's so much that you can reach easily. I went to Bologna last time, definitely getting to Siena. So someone asked me about what sites specifically to see in Florence. And, of course, the answer to that question is, well, how long are you going to be here? Because the list gets longer and longer and more diverse, the longer one is going to be there. Photos, please. It's been too long. Let me see. Does anyone know how to share a screen on this? Let me see. Participants. Ryan, did you figure out how Ava, did she try? Could you send her the link? Could you try sending her the link? Oh, I see. That was what those dings were. Ryan, could you look for the link for the event? And the link for the YouTube link and put it directly in there? Right. So, sorry, got distracted by, I sent the link, invited again, and several things. So you sent the YouTube link and it didn't let her in? It should let her in, no problem. That is so odd. Well, ask her, could you ask her if she has any questions she'd like to answer, and then she can watch the Q&A afterwards. I don't understand why it's not working for her. So things to see here in Florence, if you only have a day. I would recommend the Palazzo Medici Riccardi, because that's where the Chapel of the Magi is, and it's absolutely, seeing it up close in person makes the pictures all seem dull and colorless. And of course, there's something magical about being in the place where the Medici once haunted and ruled, from which they ruled Florence for the first 100 years of their family's dominance. Then the next thing I would recommend, of course, is the Galleria Uffizi, which is the museum, the great museum of art in Italy, where many of the great late medieval and early Renaissance masters have their pieces. A lot of Botticelli's work is there. La Primavera is there. Really amazing works of art are to be found. And the Galleria itself is beautiful because it was this beautiful 16th century building, or is a beautiful 16th century building. The Uffizi. But the Uffizi, you have to book generally in advance. And they're closed on Mondays, like many museums. Tip number 3,000. Museums tend to be closed on Mondays in Europe. So look in advance as to what might still be open on Monday, because there are always like one or two museums that go against the grain and specifically close on, say, Tuesday instead of Monday. So the Uffizi, and then the Palazzo d'Avanzati, which is a rare example of a 14th century nobleman's house or aristocrat's home in Florence. And it's outfitted largely in a 14th and 15th century style and furnished. There's a bunch of other sort of more modern pieces in it as well, 17th through early 19th century or through 19th century pieces. But a lot of the frescoes and wall paintings are original and have been restored to their original. And you can actually see how people lived in the 14th century. Well, very well-to-do people lived. And it is very interesting. So the Palazzo d'Avanzati is another must-see here. And then, completely different era, well, at least in terms of outfitting, the Palazzo Pitti, which is on Oltrarno, the other side of the river, and the Giardini Boboli, the Boboli Gardens, which are these gorgeous Renaissance gardens, very topographical, so lots of height you gain as you go through them, but just magical and stunning in a very beautiful green space that's not far at all. It's 5 minutes past the Ponte Vecchio. And the Palazzo Pitti is this massive palazzo that was built by the Pitti family in the 15th century. And then the Medici acquired it in this early 16th century and turned it into once they became the Archdukes of Tuscany, the Grand Dukes of Tuscany. And they moved basically from the Palazzo Medici over to the other side of the river into the Palazzo Pitti and turned it into this, I would call it the Versailles of Florence. It has a lot of very 17th and 18th century apartments that are stunningly decorated, but also it's a massive art collection in and of itself, displayed in the old 19th century fashion. So like 20 feet walls covered in portraits and paintings from the Middle Ages up through to the 18th century, including some serious masterpieces that I've only seen in books, but now I stumbled across them at the Palazzo Pitti. That alone will take several hours. It's really quite a massive complex, and that's not even including the gardens, which, you know, that's another hour or 2 or 3, depending on how far you wander. Yeah, so those are some of the big sites to see in Florence if you only have a limited amount of time. And then, of course, there's the Galleria dell'Accademia, which is where the David is, the original David statue is, along with a bunch of other masterpieces. Florence, it's the place you go for 15th and 16th century art and sculpture, really. You cannot screen share on YouTube Live. Oh, darn it. Okay. Well, I have travel vlogs coming out soon on my on this channel, Travels with the Contessa. Good morning, Kate. Welcome to the group. Any other questions before I move on to other random travel? I wonder if I can just hold my phone up. Pastry. This is a travel Q&A. Or do you have questions about pastries in other countries? I guess if no one else has a question, I'll take a question about pastry. And if you want to come back in with a question related to travel, go ahead. Question about pastry. I probably have an answer about pastry. Having made quite a bit of it. God, I feel so sorry for Ava. Ava, I'm sorry if you're watching this. I don't know why it wouldn't let you in. Pastries here in Florence are very popular. There's a lot of, Italian pastry shops. They are much less sweet than American pastries tend to be in general. I don't do very often anyway wheat-based products, so I don't get to many of the pastry shops here. There is actually a gluten-free movement in Italy, specifically because apparently there are a lot of people they do genetic testing, like across the peninsula. People get tested to see if they're actually celiac, because there's a gene for it. And so because of that, a lot of people have become aware of the fact that they've been eating things that have been damaging their bodies. And hence, many restaurants now offer gluten-free pasta and bread options and crust options. Unfortunately, gluten-free doesn't necessarily make it better for you, because they might just be using other crappy flours and weird chemical combinations to imitate wheat flour, and that doesn't make it necessarily good for you. Wait, why is it on slow mode? It should not be on slow mode. Okay, why on earth? Okay, dear Facebook or YouTube, why did you set up slow mode on this? Slow mode is on. Okay, unfortunately, I don't think that's something I can change now. I'll have to try to change that on the next one. That is ridiculous. Well, while we wait for YouTube to decide that it's been long enough so Kate can ask her question. So if you are gluten-free, you're celiac, there are plenty of options here. And a lot of kitchens will have a separate section that is for, no, excuse me, I should repeat that. If you're gluten sensitive, there are options. A lot of the restaurants here don't have enough room to have a completely separate gluten-free kitchen where they can guarantee that there's no cross-contamination. So if you're celiac, you're probably still going to have problems finding places to eat. But if you're gluten sensitive, that's no problem. Yeah, not a problem. And all the grocery stores have massive gluten-free sections. It's even the tiniest grocery stores. And I'm actually going to be taking a camera into one of my favorite little weird labyrinthine grocery stores here in Florence and showing you exactly how they managed to squeeze all of this these very specialty products into ridiculously tiny spaces. Why is it doing slow mode? YouTube, why are you doing this to me? Oh, bells. So the last time I was in Florence, I stayed with a lovely woman named Giovanna near Statuto, which is just outside of the old city in the 19th century part of town. There were no churches nearby. However, I'm now in the old city and there are churches nearby. And so they ring all the canonical bells, which actually I like. It's great. And I'm jet lagging, so I'm awake at 4 o'clock in the morning anyway. So I don't care that the bells then ring at 7 o'clock in the morning, but they're actually ringing right now, which is what made me notice that. So if you have an issue with bells ringing at weird times of day or night, and you are staying in a medieval city, a historic city center, whether it's Florence or even Paris, the bells ring. You might want to bring earplugs. How much Italian should you know for Italy? So if you're in a tourist area, you don't need to know. You don't need to know any Italian. In fact, I have the opposite problem. I'm learning Italian. It's my something language that I'm learning anyway. So I can express basic ideas and ask basic questions and mostly grammatically correct with a decent enough accent that they don't know I'm American. But they will still, detecting in any accent, they will still automatically break into English. And I actually have to just sort of persist in Italian to convey the idea that I would like to do this exchange in Italian. So really, in the tourist areas, you don't need to know very much Italian. But if you want to go to those restaurants I talked about, those eateries that are outside of the tourist areas, then you're going to at least need to know your foodstuffs, or I guess these days you can just use Google Translate on your phone to give you a funny, interesting, strange idea of what it is. I'm failing at commenting. Oh God, okay. Kate, if you send me the question in instant messenger through Facebook, I can go look at it there. So you don't need to know a lot of Italian. Knowing the basics is nice. Buongiorno, buonasera, buona serata, buona giornata, hello, have a good day, have a nice evening, that kind of thing. But you really don't need to know much Italian these days if you're in the main tourist areas. If you go to the small villages outside of the tourist areas, very little English is spoken, and you're going to be communicating with hands and feet, as the expression goes. But that's okay. People are really friendly here. They really are, and they're very understanding. If you're polite, then they will, and trying your best, then they will try their best, and you will figure it out, especially through the miracle of the internet. Yeah, that's a good question, actually. Okay. So Kate's question is, okay, so food related. Yeah. I made hot water crust pastry for the first time last night, and it just came out kind of bready and not flaky. Not terrible, but not quite right. Any advice? What's your favorite medieval pastry recipe? It just deleted my comment for being too long. Okay. Pastry. So pastry is tricky. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you have thoroughly incorporated the fat into the flour before adding any water. So the more finely incorporated your fat is, the better it will be, because the fat encapsulates the flour and it literally builds a protective layer around it so that it won't get so that the water will not interact with the gluten in the wheat if you're using a gluten-based or a gluten, I'm trying to think how to say this in English, a flour that contains gluten. So it's all about really encapsulating the flour thoroughly in the fat. And it turned out bready. So hot water crusts are not traditionally flaky. hot water crusts tend to be really kind of solid and dense because they originate kind of in the idea of it's the baking, it is the vessel, it is the baking vessel, a hot water crust is. It creates a pie that can completely stand up on its own. And so it needs to be a lot more hearty and a lot less flaky than a flaky pastry crust. Um, Medieval pie crusts started. That was the origin of the coffin. It's charmingly called in English in the Middle Ages. Is that it was the baking vessel and it stood up on its own, and you weren't necessarily expected to eat the crust. The crust was just a way of making a baking vessel. And often they would give the crusts away, the crust that, it had some sauce remnants on it. They would give that to the poor people because it wasn't really terribly good, but at least it was calorific. It was often really salty too. They used a lot of salt in those coffins, as far as we can tell. The first time you really start seeing recipes for flaky crusts is kind of in the 15th century. And even then, there aren't many that have been handed down. There's a recipe from the 1540s. It's called a royal paste. And that looks a lot like a modern pie crust, as we would understand a flaky pie crust. It does have eggs, which gives it a little more chew and makes it slightly fluffier than a modern short crust. But there it is. No, you did it. Okay, yeah. So I think it was, so Kate just said the recipe I tried had me boil the butter and water together and add it to the flour. Maybe you did do it right. Yeah, you did it right. If it's supposed to be one of those hot water crusts, it's supposed to be solid, and it should be a little bready. So I don't think you did anything wrong. I think you were just expecting it to be flaky, and it's not. That's just not the kind of crust it is. And that's why you can make all those beautiful decorative elements with that kind of crust, because it's got a lot of body. And so it will let you carve it into neat shapes and then do interesting things with it. When is your credit card usage presentation? So I don't know, maybe next week. Maybe next week I'll do a Q&A on how to use credit cards to maximize your travel experience and what credit cards would, suit what kind of lifestyle. Maybe next week. We'll see if there's enough. We'll see if there's enough interest for that. How close are restrooms? Do they charge? Restrooms. Oh, yeah, that's So another of my big recommendations on travel is if you are in a place that has a bathroom, a restroom that you can use for free, do it. You might think you don't need to. Do it. Get rid of what waste material you may have at that point, because you never know when the next bathroom is going to be available. I actually have not seen many public restrooms about here in Florence. A lot of cafes have them. So my best recommendation is actually to go get a cup of something or a pastry and use their bathroom that way. The public restrooms that I have seen do charge, but it's like 50 cents euro. And that's a cleaning fee. Like literally that goes to the person, usually a lady, who's sitting there and cleaning it. But yeah, I haven't actually seen many public restrooms here in Florence. Because I'm going to Italian language school right here near Santa Croce. Actually, I tend to use their bathroom. Or, like I said, go to a cafe, get a cup of something or a pastry, and then you have the right to use their bathroom. Yeah, that's a good question. Bathrooms. If you find a bathroom, you have access to a bathroom, use it whether you need to or not, because you never know when the next one may come. That's one thing. That's one thing that kept me away from Italy. I was awful with languages. Well, these days, so many people have grown up with American programming and American music. And that's really where they learn their English. Even though they have it at school, everyone I talk to, they're like, yeah, I actually learned how to speak it, not at school. So really, the level of English speaking is really high here. So there's not a language barrier as long as you stick to the the main. And honestly, there's so many wonderful things to see in the main tourist cities that it would take a long time before you would have to go into one of these mountain villages or country villages. Have you found a favorite cafe yet? Actually, so I thought I hadn't, but then I realized I have. And it's not that I found a favorite. I have found one that I really like. I haven't gone to many cafes, not on purpose, just I haven't. I've been so busy doing other things like walking around. I haven't taken the time to sit at a cafe and drink. But I did go to one, and it's called Shakewell, and it's an organic cafe. They have a really nice selection of actually freshly made, like right there every day, organic salads and dishes and pastries and low sugar sorts of things also. And they've got a really nice selection of coffees and teas, and it's a nice environment to just go and sit and work like I do on my laptop. They wonder, they asked me what I did for a living, because apparently I type quite militantly when I'm vlogging. So Shakewell is a place I can really recommend. Friendly staff, super top quality ingredients, organic. They don't have any outdoor seating though, so it's indoors. So if you want one of those, those cafes on a square, I don't have any recommendations on that. In that regard, if you want the cafe with the view, kind of all equal, because you're paying for the view, not for the thing you're consuming, really. Let's see. Okay, I heard a ding, but I have no idea what that ding was. So, okay, other questions. Let me see. Yeah, so I've pretty much, I'm confident I have more stored knowledge. It's a question of dragging it out, and just sort of accessing it randomly as I think of it. It's not necessarily the best. All of the questions that people asked in advance, I think I have addressed at this point. Do you have videos showing interactions between? No, because I don't have any videos of interactions between me and when I'm in my late medieval or early Renaissance clothing and other people, because in Europe there's some very strict rules about filming people without their consent. So no, I don't have it. And I can't really get that kind of stuff because I'm all alone. I don't have a camera person. If Ryan were here, we could probably get more interesting footage of interactions between, showing how people react to me in medieval clothing. I'll possibly be going out tomorrow, actually in my 1480s attire, and doing some more random wandering around Firenze in my Pianelle. Any good books in the museum stores? Yeah, museum stores are dangerous for bibliophiles, for lovers of books. I have found probably too many books in museum stores, but I've only been here 2 days, guys, and I spent a lot of that grocery shopping and buying a new laptop. So I haven't actually gotten into any museums this time. In the past, we found some amazing books. We found really rare copies of inventories from the Medici household from the 15th century. The inventories taken at the death of several of the pre-Lorenzo Medici patriarchs. They were super expensive. They were like 150 euros. That's what happens when you buy a book that had like a print run of 100 and was on the top shelf and super dusty and probably hadn't been touched in 30 years since it was put up on that top shelf in the Bargello. Yeah, so those are the kind of books we tend to find in museums here. And all right, that's why I generally I stay away from the museum stores, because they do have lots of dangerous things for seekers of knowledge like me. Let me just check and see if that ding was something from a person. Nope, it was just a random ding. Okay, well, all Are there any other questions or comments? I wish, apparently we can't share screens on YouTube Live. Actually, let me try this. Let me grab my phone, which is here, apparently. And I'll see if I can show you some of the pictures I got. We'll see how this goes, because I noticed that the camera on this much less expensive laptop is definitely not as good as on my expensive laptop. But let's see how it goes. There were the sun came out today. There was just some absolutely stunning stuff to be had. Oh, and right next to me on the rooftop next to me, right out my window, they were redoing the roof. So I got to see how they redo roofs on these 17th century buildings with the original terracotta tiles. Let's see if this actually works. I don't think it's going to, because the camera quality just sucks. Nope, the camera's just not good enough quality for it. Sorry, guys. Well, I'll be putting all of this into a travel vlog, and I'm thinking of just taking the pictures from today and just doing like a slideshow and putting that on the travel channel just for immediate visual gratification for those of you who want to see the beauty that was to be found today here in Florence. AC available. Oh, is AC available? Not in this apartment. No, it has air conditioning. It does. And that's actually a good thing, because something a lot of people don't know about Florence, and it's something that guidebooks all neglect to mention, is that the Arno is very much like a swamp in parts. And there's a lot of swampy parts that branch off of the Arno. And those swampy bits are fantastic breeding grounds for mosquitoes. And so Florence actually has a mosquito problem in the warmer parts of the year, which is why, again, if you travel in the off season, the mosquitoes are dead. So that's good, because when I was here in November, there were two diehard mosquitoes in the room where I was staying that would come after me at night. And they would come right for my ear area, of course, because that was the part of me that is exposed. And so invariably my sleep was disturbed by that nightmarish, horrifying buzz of the dive bombing mosquito. So yeah, if you travel in Florence in the off season, i.e., I guess this is technically midwinter, but it's really nice compared to where I came from, then the mosquitoes will all be dead and you won't have to fight with them. And then you won't have to worry about whether there's air conditioning or not either, because the apartment is a comfortable 19.7 degrees, which is like 69, I guess, ish, maybe 70. Okay, everyone. Well, last chance for questions. I'm sorry if I'm going to have to check that slow mode being on. That's silly. There's definitely not enough people at my Q&As to merit slow mode. Maybe someday that would be nice if these get that popular, but we certainly aren't there yet. Well, since there seem to be no more questions, or no more questions that will come through in a timely fashion, and I did sort of plan this to be an hour, and we're right about in an hour. I appreciate, thank you, Alessandra. My class starts again on Monday. I'm very excited to get back into the Italian language learning. I can feel my Italian slowly warming back up as I've been here. I did my entire laptop shopping experience in Italian. I was very proud of me. Yeah, they only asked if I wanted to speak English once. Well, thank you all for joining me. It was lovely to chat with you. And if you want to watch any part of this again for whatever interesting reason, it will be posted on my Travels with the Contessa channel. Otherwise, subscribe if you want to see other travel content. I've got a whole bunch scripted and ready to go. We just need to actually edit it. Video editing, in case you're wondering, takes a lot of time and effort. But I've got the scripts written. I literally have about 100 pages of script for my travel vlog from starting back in October till now. Yeah, hours and hours it will eventually be. Okay, everyone, have a great Saturday/Sunday, depending on the hemisphere from which you are watching this. Travel's creative, guys. Bye.